What was the moment you realized you needed to turn your personal tragedy into a mission to help others?
Wow, Ayush, that's a really important question. There were a lot of, after the suicide, I just couldn't accept it. I could not believe that someone as successful as John was, could possibly, that this could be over. So I kind of was looking, seeking anything, any sign, anything to give me some kind of hope in the middle of nothing but despair and hopelessness. And a lot of signs happened, but what did happen? A couple of things. My About a month after he died, I got a cold call from a woman, and she said, "You don't know me, but I'm a psychic, and I know about your son." And she said, "I have something incredibly important to tell you, but I'm not going to tell you over the phone. You'll have to come to my house. I'll give you a free reading, but you have to come." And I live in Santa Barbara, California, and she lived in Sedona, Arizona. Yeah. And, you know, knowing no more than that, I just was like, I'll do anything. So my boyfriend had to take me down because I couldn't even drive. And anyway, she brought me into her house and she sat me in the middle of the living room, and she had these giant crystals about 2 feet high or 3 feet high, in the north, south, east, and west uh, quadrants. And we sat in the middle, and her son served us tea, and she started talking. And I don't remember all of it because it was an hour, but I will never forget what she said. She said, "Your son did what he needed to do and left. But you and he share the same purpose for being on earth. He finished his part, you'll finish the rest." And I didn't know what she meant then, but it was a stunning message that it wasn't over, that there was more to do, and that somehow that would happen. And so that's kind of threw me into a warp where I was really thinking, I have a mission for my son and for the world. And then I started writing. I just become a psychotherapist when he killed himself. So I had the tools I'd never had as a mom. And I had to find out what his story was. What in the heck caused him to end up killing himself after being the most stunning success I've ever seen? And I just had to find out what was his story. And I thought maybe now with the insights and tools and training I had, maybe I could find out what I must have missed as a mom. And so I really went on an anthropological dig of our lives. And one by one, I would find a story at different ages that totally made sense of his suicide. And I'd write it up, and then I'd just throw it in a file cabinet and just run because it was so painful to see that I missed what all that I missed. And it just kept accumulating and accumulating. And one day I got all my courage up, and I opened that file cabinet, and I had to see what I'd done because I felt like I'd done nothing. And I pulled out 90 stories, which blew my mind. I didn't know. I just, yeah. And so when I put them in chronological order, and I was seeing all that had happened that had created, had culminated in my son's suicide. And I was like, can I make this, how can I make this, his life meaningful for the world? How can I help others, with what I've found here for what my son went through? And immediately, the first thought I had was Eric Erickson's Eight Ages of Man. And that was a part of my studies as I was becoming licensed as a therapist. You go through the training, and one of the people you do study is Eric Erickson. He's the father of psychosocial theory, and he wrote this. He did a lot of analysis of people's lives throughout their lives, and he came up with this little template that shows what the core issue at each age is. And when you look at what happened to John at each age, the core issue was not met. And I didn't see it. I didn't know what they were. Most parents don't. And I realized that if people just knew what to lead to and what to avoid at every stage, that will, in and of itself, will help your children or anyone at any age keep life worth the living. And I think that's how we prevent suicide. And so that's the moment when I pulled out all those stories, and I saw that they had power, they had real meaning, and they weren't dead, they were happening to young people today. So I felt like that was the moment I probably realized I had to write this story.
Thank you so much, first of all, for having this conversation, Sally, because it is such an intimate and raw and personal experience and journey. And I say journey because I do want to ask, is suicide as a parent, experiencing that, something you ever get over? Or is
No,
that something?
no, never. You know, that you don't realize. I think a lot of people think that when you give birth, you're separate from the other person. The mother and child are separate. The mother and father, the child and the father are separate. No, you are not separate. Your body is still that body too. And when that something happens to that body, it destroys you as much as them. And you know, you might be alive, but there's so much of you that's dead. And I don't think people realize that we are connected. We are deeply, deeply connected. You were actually born, Ayush. You began life inside your grandmother, inside your mother as a fetus. You were there inside your grandmother already. We are all seated 2 bodies deep to just begin life. And it takes all of that to be able to give human life the resilience to be able to be born and possibly survive. And I don't think people realize that, you know, the grandmother child connection is a deep one. You know, you knew your grandmother even in the womb, in your mother's womb, because she was inside her mother and you were already there.
Wow. Wow. The the connection is something that we always seem to forget. It's something that we've taken for granted. It's something that we've shoved in the back of our subconscious. And it's great to finally hear it being spoken out loud. Your word is your bond. Sally, I do want to ask because I don't think we can have a conversation like this while tiptoeing around certain things. And I know
Okay.
you're aware of that. And so I do want to give a little warning to the audience if they're uncomfortable with this material. Maybe they can listen to the transcript or something. But what are the signs as a parent that you should look out for? Both signs of your child doing something or not doing something that can maybe indicate that they are on a pretty terrible path.
Yeah, there's a whole lot of warning signs, and they're very obvious. But a lot of people don't know a few of them, and it's really important that they do, because if you miss it, you may never forgive yourself. And so, being a burden, feeling like a burden, children talking about being a burden to others, people talking about feeling hopeless or having no reason to live, talking about wanting to die, or talking about feeling trapped or in unbearable pain, looking for ways to kill yourself, like searching for a gun or something like that. Behaving recklessly is another sign or using increasing use of alcohol and drugs, which is a way to flatline your whole potential, and it's kind of a living death. Um, extreme mood swings, sleeping too little or too much, withdrawing or feeling isolated, or the one of the worst one is when you've seen your child be really depressed for a long time, and suddenly they seem bright and excited to and everything like that. That's a huge sign, because if they've been depressed for a long time, they often decide on suicide for sure, and it's like a big relief. I could just tell myself and I'll be fine. And at that time, you see them just brighten up and seem okay. It means suicide is possibly very imminent. And so these are a lot of the signs, and we really have to be able to ID them and then address them. And what a lot of parents don't do is they don't know what to say and they don't know what to do. And you have to ask. You have to broach the subject and say, I need to talk to you about something. I'm getting very worried about you and I love you. And I can't bear to see you depressed or whatever they're going through. And I'm wondering, are you feeling suicidal? It is really important to do this, because I'll tell you, I had one a young man renting a room, and he and I had become very close. And I knew he was in a down place. Was feeling very depressed about his life. And all of a sudden he came, and it was around Christmas time, and he had thrown 32 clay bowls, and he had made of each one, had painted the name of someone he loved on it. And he had made a fountain for each one out of the bowls was really cute and everything. And when he told me, he gave me mine, and we were talking, and he said, yeah, I made 32 for everybody. And I went, you made 32 clay bowls for everyone that you care about? And he said, yeah. And I said, that's incredible. Are you thinking of killing yourself? And his eyes said, yes. And I went, oh, no, you don't. I said, every people just love you to pieces. It would destroy so many people. And believe me, you are a rare, rare person. Only, he was worried about relationships, about someone finding a love. And I said, you're a really rare person, and only somebody really as rare as you is ever going to come into your life and be able to be that person for you. And I said, it's going to take a while because you are very rare. But believe me, that person exists because you exist. And so you just have to hang on and wait, and it will show up, but it won't show up immediately, and maybe not for a long time, but it'll be worth the wait. And I'm very happy to report that he did find that person. He's the happiest guy in the world. And he made me the ring bearer in his wedding.
That's beautiful. That's absolutely beautiful. I do want to ask, how do kids talk to their parents about this? Because it feels like if it's always a one-way street, some parents are intimidated, they don't know how to go about it, but there's also a lot of friction, but especially now between kids and parents. Kids may be going through the rebellious stage. How can a child really figure out how to bring it up to their parents, or maybe give them an olive branch in some way?
Well, a lot of people need to be hit over the head with a hammer, especially when it comes to suicide, because parents are dedicated to living in the cup half full. We are always leading to life, leading to possibilities, and believing in their kids, and doing everything we can. And we don't handle well the negative. It's like we just are lost. That's lost to our sight because we're so busy leading to positives with our kids. That was certainly the case with me with John. I was seeing all the positives, and I didn't see that in the cup half empty, he was drowning. You know, I really didn't see it. I just saw a superstar. I didn't see that he was hollowing out. And so children, it's really hard to ask for help. And it's hard for parents to hear it because they don't know what to do. Often they don't know what to do. And so, but it's really important to say, I need help. I need help. I'm going through a really scary time right now and I need help. And the parents can get a therapist or get somebody who's an expert because they need to be able to be shepherded in a way that's going to not end up um, uh, undermining them instead. And if parents can't do it, there are other, experts are available. And it's really important that child tell them, because a lot of parents are going to miss it. And it's not because they don't love them, but they just don't see it. So it's really important to open your mouth and say, I need help. I really need help. And the more that parents can actually begin conversations when the child is young, and help them understand that sometimes we go through really hard times and we'll feel bad, we'll feel horrible, and we'll feel like doing something really that we wouldn't be proud of or we wouldn't want to do normally. But these things happen. And so when it does, you want to let the child know anytime you feel like that, you come to me. You talk to me about it. We need to talk about it. And then also, it's great if parents start the conversations about telling their children at appropriate or just share every so often about maybe a hard time you went through and so how that was for you and how painful and scary and hopeless and despairing or whatever it was. And then just go, what kept you here? What kept you going? And what does it feel like now? What do you see now about it that you didn't know before? Those are really good because it helps the kids realize there's always a wave to life. It goes up, it goes down. And when it's down, that's when we learn and we have to grow new skills. When it's up, you just ride the wave. It's just, there's not a lot of learning, you just enjoy. But when it goes down, that's a really important time, not to fear, but to help yourself get more equipped for more life, to become more resilient. And so, in every wave that's down comes back up. And you need to know that even at the worst, at the lowest part, it's already starting to rise. So you have to just be a cork. I like to tell people that.
What does that word mean for you?
Just ride the wave. Like ride the wave. Don't don't take it personally. Don't think it's, oh my God, this is the worst. I can't stand it. It's unbearable. I just want to get out of here. No, it's got its own education. It's a lesson. These are lessons. They're not to take you out, they're to equip you. Nothing is worth dying over. It's just a lesson to be learned. Don't take it personally. This isn't about you. This isn't about a failure. This is about an education.
It's very important. I want to take a step back and talk about suicide, not from the, because I feel like in culture right now, we have many mediums to understand suicide. You have books like the one that you've written, you have podcasts like this one, you have movies and TV shows and articles. But there is a reality where certain people don't think that suicide is a real thing or is a real possibility for their kids or just in general. They don't even believe that depression is real. They don't believe that mental health or mental illness is real in that way. The same people write off therapy, for example. How do you talk to and explain to these people what suicide is, what depression is, that your child and your loved ones can suffer from these things and just not tell you, and you would just be completely oblivious to this because absence of evidence is not evidence of absence?
No, absolutely not. What a beautiful statement. I hadn't heard that one before, but I love it. It is so true. Just because you don't think anything happening, it doesn't mean it isn't. Yeah, and that was the case with me because I was just seeing a rosy picture of a young man getting straight A's, doing the most incredible things, forcing me to become a straight A student because I had to keep up with him and stay the mom. And I just saw a superstar. I didn't see what was going on inside of him very well, and he wasn't telling me. And I'm not sure I would have known what to say at that time because I was just a mom then. But boy, oh boy, do I know now that we really have to realize, it's really hard to face. A lot of parents, this is the worst subject you can imagine because it's so painful. I found out that after John died, I was reading the diagnostic manual that the psychologists use. And one of the earlier versions had a scale of stressors. The worst stressor possible is the death of a child. It is equated with surviving Auschwitz and that is absolutely literally true. I found myself in a mausoleum. I was in a concentration camp looking for any hair, any scrap of clothes, any any sign of him. And you're there forever because love requires it. You can't bear it without him. And so it's so scary. It's so painful and it's so unending that it's something people they shy away from it. And when I lost my son, I had a lot of colleagues, a lot of psychologists, and they just left me. They couldn't bear it. They just couldn't bear it. And I could understand why they did that, but I was stranded. I was left completely alone. And it was because it's too painful. And so we have to understand how very, very hard it is to turn around and face something like this. But it's absolutely critical that we do, because right now, suicide for the 10 to 33 year olds is their number one cause of death.
Are you kidding me?
I am not.
Oh my gosh.
It's normally our 10th most likely cause of death. But now for the young, it's number one. And that's never been true before in the history of man. So if we don't face this, we're looking at the loss of our whole future because the young are the future. So there's a lot going wrong that we aren't paying attention to or missing. And I have spent, 34 years now. It took 28 years to write the book. It had to be good and it had to work. But I've also found what we are innocently doing or not doing that is contributing to the demise and the demoralization and the opting out of our youth.
I'm sorry, you said you took 28 years to write the book?
It took 28 years because every story was so painful. And when I'd write it, I'd just have to go and kind of just run away, sometimes for months before I could bear to come back and look some more. It was just so painful. And then there were so many times I'd start and then I'd go, I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to structure it. And finally, I got the most incredible editor, and she was given to me by a woman who has written 29 books. And she said, I have your perfect editor. And she said, go home and, email this person. And I did. And I just said that Jean Houston said that you're my perfect editor. And within 5 minutes, she wrote back saying, if Jean Houston says I'm your perfect editor, I am. And it began an incredible conversation. She was the perfect person. She'd edited 250 books with Harper Row, many of them bestsellers. And she read my book and she was what I'd written already. And she said, we're doing this. This is too important. And but it took forever, and we fought over every single page. And she was always right. You know,
Those are the best editors.
she was always right. But she was just absolutely the perfect person. And she, at the end, she told me, after of all the books I've edited, I'm proudest of yours. So it was a lot, but then I've been on a roll ever since, seeking more stories, seeking what else is wrong. And one of the most horrible things I've noticed is that we stopped teaching social emotional skills to kids back in the Industrial Revolution because they wanted to prioritize, mechanics and how to STEM and all that stuff. And so the parents haven't been taught them, and the children haven't been taught them. And that's the glue that keeps society cohesive and stable and together and keeps each individual feeling good about themselves. And so I identified that, many, many years ago. And so by teacher invitation, I'm invited into classrooms every year, and I teach what the schools aren't teaching. I teach communication and leadership skills. And every year I walk into a sea of dead, bored eyes. I tell you, it's so scary. You look at these kids and you think, if that's how you feel, what are your chances of being good, having a good life? You're already bored out of your tree. But in 8 weeks after I walk in, you can't believe the light in their eyes. You can't believe all the hands are raising. They're just so excited because they're finding out that they know how to say things. They know how to present themselves. They know what makes a difference, and they learn how to do it. And then they learn how to listen. They learn how to learn. Learn how to say critical things in a positive way to people, that people say thank you instead of I hate you. And they walk out, they're just absolutely different people. And they know that they can make a difference. They know how to make a difference, and they know they matter. And that's not what the schools are teaching. And I've been doing it 21 years now for free, because I just love what I see happen in that schoolroom. It's too much fun. But this needs to go mainstream. We need to reboot what works for life, what works for society, what works for individuals. It's the same thing.
Well, before we talk about exactly what we should do, which we're going to come to absolutely, I do
Mhm.
want to touch base on why is suicide the number one factor of death for people aged 10 to 33? What are we doing wrong as a society?
We have lost the glue that keeps society together. We are all being divided against ourselves. We're being set upon ourselves. We are losing the trust in our own power, our own ability to grow and become, and that it's safe to grow and become. And we are really losing all the things that keep any society, strong, cohesive, and stable and growthful. And without that, if we don't have a positive environment to grow in, what do you hope for? What do you believe in? I mean, now we have AI and it's shattering our reality. What's true? What's not true? And when people are at sea like that, and they just lose their bearings, they lose their bearings. And that's what's going to destroy everything, because you see there's everybody on screens, and the bullying, the cruelty is being able to be negotiated through screens and these kinds of things is just horrible. And we're not doing anything effective about it. And if we don't do something, that's the whole thing, is if we just stand up for what works for society, it will help every child feel, there's hope. It will bring back hope. But we have to be effective, and we're not. We are not being effective. No, we're not, ensuring people feel respected, feel equal, feel, hopeful. We're giving them a schooling that is stultifying, not exciting. When I walk in and see just a sea of bored dead eyes, I'm like, oh my God, that's horrible. Yeah. And if that's how they feel, what do you think is next? Do you think they're going to be excited to go and, go against the grain and somehow get a great job? No, they're giving up. They're giving up. And that's what I'm seeing. But I can turn that around in 8 weeks. And it's a wonderful feeling. And years ago, I had worked with an at-risk group again, a sea of bored dead eyes. And in 8 weeks, they were just on fire. And they were a virtual enterprise class. And the teacher, when I walked in, he told me, he said, these kids will be lucky to get a job at McDonald's. And I was like, what a terrible teacher. That's a horrible thing to say about your class, you know? And in 8 weeks, they just totally were on fire and they had to go compete against 130 schools nationwide in this, who are all in the same virtual enterprise kind of domain. And these hopeless kids that would be lucky to get a job at McDonald's swept 5 of the 7 awards. And when I I went back to the class the next time, the teacher just was like stunned. He said, "This is impossible." And I said, "No, this is a failure of your educational system." I said, "If I could do this in 8 weeks, you have no excuse. You have none." And I was just so mad. But years later, I was out at a dinner and I felt a tap on my shoulder and I turned and there was a young lady there and she said, "I bet you don't remember me." And I said, "Hi, Stacy." Um, and she said, "I just wanted to tell you that she was from that class." And she said, "I just wanted you to know that of all the classes I ever took in school, yours was by far the best." Because I gave her hope. And I gave her hope that she could physically internalize and do something with. And that's what we're not doing in school.
How do teachers and also classmates create an environment that is pro youth and protopia, moving in the right direction for society and civilization? How can we nurture people? It's not just about 8 weeks, because not to be pessimistic, but after 8 weeks, kind of just like the way that we study for tests, we're cramming all night. As soon as the test is over, we've forgotten 90% after an
Mhm.
hour. I don't want that to happen. We can't have that socially. How do we
No.
make this not an 8 week thing, but for like a lifetime thing?
Well, I have the answer actually. Because right now, most schools grade, at least most classes are graded on the curve. Highly dangerous. Because what the curve does is artificially creates a few super standouts and everybody else is whatever. And that's great for the higher education, choosing out of, who's going to matter the most in higher education and pick graduate student, schools to go on to graduate study or higher education. But it's 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 poison for the kids. It just creates a huge rift between a few edges and then the rest that are not identified as anything special. And what happens in class gets acted out of class. And those kids that weren't identified attack bullies. They become bullies and they attack the smart ones. My son was pilloried because he couldn't help it. He was just getting straight A's all the time. And the kids hated him. They teased him, they called him down, they made him feel terrible. It was awful. And when he got to Carnegie Mellon at 16, those kids by then were experts at bullying and being cruel. And I just was, oh, it was horrible. But there's another kind of way of grading that creates hegemony, bonding, and equality in classes. It's called criterion reference testing, and it's basically just using the raw grades the student gets, and that's what they get. And that's democratic. And when you and I have had one class in that, and I've had so many classes that were curved, and then I had one class that was criterion referenced, and everybody was like for everybody else. There was no competition. Everybody was rooting for everybody else because there was no hierarchy. What the hierarchy is, whatever you got is what you got, and there was no special uh, an algorithm over that was going to differentiate in different ways. And that created bonding, unity, all for one for all. It was really a completely different feeling. And if we did that, it would so help society because these kids are going to go out into the world and they're going to take the skills they learned in school, whether they're pro-social or antisocial, and they're going to continue working those and making them more and more potent. And if they work on the negative stuff, I hate to think about what society is going to look like. But yeah, but we're doing it in the classroom. A lot of it is in the classroom because we're differentiating the kids in ways that isn't normal, isn't right, and it just creates antipathy, it creates resentment, it creates, acting out and acting in. And my son, I know he was absolutely pilloried so many ways. It was really horrible to see. And I didn't know a lot of it. He was trying to be him, a man. He was trying to grow up and take responsibility. And he wasn't telling me a lot of things. But after he died, his journal, he had a journal, and it was a nightmare to read. If I had known, I would have gone into those classes with swinging. I would have, but I never knew. He was trying to deal with it himself.
As a parent, and I apologize if this is too personal of a question, but as a parent, is it right for you to take responsibility purely if your child is withholding information?
I'm not sure I'm yeah, well, if I had known what was happening, I would have confronted the school. I would have said, this is not okay. He would have probably hated me doing that, you know, and so he never told me. But there has to be some accountability here. There has to be, because this isn't great, but we can avoid all that if we set it up differently. If we restructure schools to help everybody have an equal chance to grow, then that will just dissolve. And another thing is that we're not teaching study skills early in school, how to learn. They just assume you know. No, you don't. You have to learn them. If you learn them, then you can utilize them. But if you don't learn them, then it's a random function. And some people are naturally gifted and some people need help. Why not make it democratic and give everybody an equal chance? My younger son was 18 months younger than John, and John was a genius. He was reading it too. He was giving me 45-minute debates on why he didn't need to make his bed at 5, and he was winning. And I was like, this is only going to get worse. And I was a single parent, and I was like, I have to stay the mom, and I was like, what do? I thought, well, I have to go back to school. And I was a C student in high school, and I had to go back, and then I couldn't get a B because he never got a B, and I had to keep his respect. And the 1B plus I got, he absolutely crucified me for.
What was the subject you got a B plus in?
Oh gosh, what was it? Was I think it was knowledge and perception out of anthropology. And it was a really cool class, but it was hard to read because they were using all source material, and I hadn't been in school for many years, and I was like, oh my gosh, where's the verb? And I was just and I got a B plus, and he just, oh my God. And I was like, I can't let him do that to me again. So I never got another B. And because of him, I graduated with highest honors. I would never have done that in a million years without him being who he was. But, that was what it took to be a mom of a genius.
Yeah, absolutely. What advice do you have for kids and also parents who, let's be honest, I feel like unfortunately with our society that we have right now, we're all going to encounter a story of suicide close to us.
Oh, yeah.
And we need to change that. And it all starts with getting people the right information and telling them exactly how to use that information. What advice do we have for both groups, the kids that may suffer from these kinds of thoughts and the parents that want to protect their children from these thoughts?
Mhm. Well, I really believe that one of the things I want to shift is the idea that there's nothing you can do. A lot of parents feel helpless. They feel like it's overwhelming. They don't know where to start. And that you start early in their life, in the children's life, and you start talking about bad times you've had and hard times. And you talk about, someday you're going to have something happen. And the most important thing is to not take it personally. This isn't about you. You are not bad. You cannot be bad. You cannot be a failure. You can't be anything but an incredible human being. But lessons happen and they're hard. And it feels very personal and it feels despairing and it feels hopeless sometimes. But you just have to hang on and do nothing but wait, because naturally everything, every cloud passes, every dark night turns to light. And this too will end up being probably the very best thing that ever happened to you when you look back on it. But you won't feel that now. You won't feel it. You won't think it. And it would be awful. And that's when you have to wait and trust the process. You have to hold on. Don't do anything, because our limbic system, which was created in you know, the prehistoric jungle where everything was dangerous, it helped us survive because it helped us flee or fight or freeze. And most of us got back to the cave, and that part of our brain that helped us survive never changed because it had survival value. But nowadays, that same part of our brain, which is always scanning for danger or safety, it's still the same. And it's whenever it reads anything that changes, it sends cortisol, it sends adrenaline in, which is energy to survive. And it creates it makes us impulsively do things that we today are as anesthetic to our survival. I haven't met a single saber-toothed tiger yet, but that's how the brain is organized. And so we have to kind of do a run around our own brain. And the first thought you ever have is always going to be the worst case. It's the most protective, but it's also the least likely. So you have to sit there and ID when you have the first thought you ever have is going to be a worst case thought. Then go, okay, got that covered. But don't attach to it. Then think, what would I prefer to be having? What would I prefer to have happen? Because whatever you focus on grows. It's the first rule of hypnosis. If you focus on the worst case, even though it's the least likely, you're going to behave in ways that are going to subtly assume it's true. And not only is it going to make you to think and do things that are desperate, erroneously desperate, it's also going to increase the probability of the worst thing happen because of the way you're treating it. So instead, if you focus on the most ideal possibility, which is all the brain does is throw up a hypothesis. Just it doesn't know anything, it can't see anything, it can't hear anything. It's just throwing a hypothesis of what it could possibly be. So you have to look and go, what's more likely or what's the ideal? And if you focus on that, that too will create more likelihood of that happening, and it will buoy you. The worst case will take you down, will spin you out, will make you feel hopeless and helpless, and it just is in no way. It's a negative trip. But if you feel like, oh, what can I do here? What's possible here? What can I do? What would I prefer? You are working on the positive side, and that will help buoy you, and it'll help it become more, be more likely to come true. Well, hello.
If you had a magic wand and you could solve one problem in the world, what would it be and why?
It's a good question. Uh, our ability to delude ourselves. I was listening to a talk by Yuval Noah Harari, who wrote *Sapiens*. He's just a fabulous speaker, and he has so much to say. And he was saying how that the humans are the most delusional species on Earth. And he said, a chimpanzee would know better. And I really think that if we looked at what worked for life, if we looked at nature, if we looked at each other as gifts and not as problems or different, put a name, whatever name you put to it, I think it would really help us cohere again and restart a positive civilization where it's worth living, it's worth enjoying, and that people could it could be the paradise we were promised. I really believe it's here. It's just our thoughts that either make it happen or it gives us hell.
Sally, as a last question, what gives you hope in the world?
It's what happens to us happens. With John, his death, his suicide was the catalyst that forced me to become, who I am now. And I am on a mission to help everybody avoid suicide and keep life worth the living, because I think that suicide prevention really is about keeping life worth the living. Because if we do then that thing just goes away. And we aren't. And so I'm 82 years old. And I don't care what happens, but I am going to do every single thing I can in this world to help keep life worth the living for every single person, because I never want anyone to suffer like John did. I never want anyone to go through the hell I went through, and everyone would go through, because suicide doesn't just kill one person. It kills a whole galaxy of people around him or her. And they all lose their way. They all crash and burn. They all have, they'll never be the same again. And nobody realizes how deeply that affects a whole fabric of society. And we are losing incredible people for no reason. None. And so I'm here to really not only be a psychotherapist, which I've got over 29,000 sessions now, and I've lost nobody to suicide, but that's because John taught me the hardest way possible about what needs to happen instead. And I've been on a mission to learn and learn and learn all I possibly can from him and from everyone else. And I am not going to leave this world without doing everything I can to keep life worth the living.
Sally, you are a beautiful soul. We're all here to support you. Where can we find you online, and how can we keep in touch and follow your work?
You can find me at sallyaraymond.com, or my email is sbsal@cox.net. And I'm always available to anyone, and I'm here to help. And that's my life. That's my promise to you.
Sally, it was a terrific episode. It was a very heartfelt episode. Thank you so much for sharing your story and for talking with us today.
Thank you, Ayush, for the whole opportunity to do so. You've been incredible and you're a wonderful, wonderful interviewer and person, I can tell. And I could tell how much you really care, and that means the world.
Thank you, everyone.